Do you know just how arrogant Xiaoyan became after arriving in the Dan God Great Domain? He openly advanced without hiding his presence, deliberately drawing the attention of powerful experts. Picking up from before, what is this? Looking at the two streaks of light rapidly approaching, Dan Linger's expression gradually turned serious. She knew that the green light represented someone whose strength was not weaker than hers. As for the red light, it belonged to someone far stronger than her. Moreover, it was not an ordinary red, it was a deep, blood-like crimson. That was an Earth Supreme of the higher tier. Let's go. As the two mysterious and powerful auras suddenly appeared, Dan Linger immediately made a decisive choice. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of miles away, the two who were tracking them were none other than the young master of the Divine Medicine sect and Elder Fan. What's going on? Why did they suddenly speed up? Have they discovered our tracking? The young master asked. Hearing this, Elder Fan replied, "Chase them." As his voice fell, a massive pursuit began centered around a mountain range. However, due to the difference in speed, the distance between the two sides continued shrinking at a rate of tens of thousands of miles per minute, until only less than 60,000 miles remained. Just as Dan Linger could already sense the terrifying auras behind her, something strange happened. Those two auras suddenly vanished in an instant, as if they had completely evaporated. At this moment, on a mountain peak 600,000 miles away, Elder Fan, what is going on? The young master looked around in shock. He clearly realized a terrifying fact. Just a few breaths ago, they were still over 500,000 miles away. Yet in the blink of an eye, they had appeared here. Elder Fan's expression also turned grave. He knew very well. To teleport them such a distance in an instant, the one behind it must be an extraordinary expert. Either someone with near heaven-defying mastery over spatial laws, or a heaven supreme. Young master, run. We've been targeted. However, just as they tore open space to escape, a terrifying heaven and earth pressure suddenly descended. Under that pressure, both of them instantly lost all their strength. Only now did they truly understand what kind of existence had set its sights on them. Damn it, the young master cursed. A spiritual imprint of the sect master appeared in his hand. He clenched it, attempting to crush it. But in that instant, the imprint mysteriously vanished. The young master's pupils shrank violently. That was his last lifeline. Now stripped of all means, they stood helplessly atop the mountain. They understood clearly. If the opponent wished to kill them, they would have no power to resist. Even more terrifying, they still did not know who their opponent was. At that moment, a sea of flames suddenly rose in the distant sky. It gathered into a massive flame tide stretching for hundreds of thousands of feet. Amidst the rolling flames, a cold-faced figure in black robes slowly emerged. When Elder Fan and the young master saw his face, their expressions changed drastically. It was Xiaoyan. "Who are you, sir? Have we offended you in some way?" Elder Fan asked cautiously. "I am the young master of the Divine Medicine sect. You dare do this? Are you declaring war against us?" However, the young master stepped forward angrily and shouted, "Young master." Elder Fan tried to stop him, but at that moment, a terrifying fluctuation of spiritual power surged. Xiaoyan casually flicked his finger. A flame beam only a few meters wide shot across the sky and struck the young master's chest. He was blasted hundreds of thousands of feet away instantly. With a deafening explosion, a massive crater appeared in the forest. Inside it lay the young master, unconscious yet still alive. Elder Fan did not rush to save him, not because he feared Xiaoyan, but because he feared that Xiaoyan might truly kill him. Moreover, Xiaoyan's strength might even surpass that of their sect master. Before such a person, anything he did would be meaningless. "I don't know how we offended you, but isn't this a bit excessive?" Elder Fan said. Xiaoyan did not reply. He waved his sleeve lightly. The flame tide beneath him gradually dissipated into spiritual energy. His figure also faded like smoke. Before his figure completely faded into nothingness, Xiaoyan finally spoke. His voice was calm. yet it carried an unquestionable authority that seemed to echo through the heavens and the earth. Go back to where you came from. A brief pause. Then, the ancient pill scripture is not something you are qualified to covet. The moment those words fell, his figure dispersed like drifting smoke, vanishing without a trace. The flames, the pressure, the overwhelming presence, all of it disappeared as if it had never existed. Only silence remained. A suffocating, terrifying silence. Damn it! Who exactly is this man? It was only after a long while that Elder Fan finally snapped out of his shock, his face pale as he let out a furious roar. Even now, his heart was still trembling uncontrollably. That kind of power, that kind of absolute suppression, he had never felt anything like it before, not even from the sect master. Without wasting another second, his figure shot forward like a streak of light, rushing toward the distant crater where the young master lay. Meanwhile, nearly 1,000,000 miles away, Dan Linger and her companion were still flying at their absolute limit. Wind tore past them like blades space-warping under their speed. Their expressions remained tense, not daring to slow down in the slightest. They could still vaguely feel the lingering pressure behind them, like a shadow that refused to disappear. Yet what they didn't know was, the divine medicine sect experts who had been relentlessly pursuing them had already been utterly defeated, reduced to nothing more than frightened fleeing figures, like stray dogs driven away by a supreme existence. Far away, at the edge of the floating Shan domain, tens of millions of miles apart, space suddenly twisted. A figure tore through the void at an unimaginable speed. Every step he took caused space itself to collapse and reform beneath his feet. That figure was Xiao. His black robes fluttered silently, his expression calm and indifferent, as if everything that had just happened was nothing more than a trivial interruption. His destination, the Dan God clan, though hundreds of millions of miles still lay ahead, an almost inconceivable distance, even for most Supreme Realm experts. To Xiao, it was merely a matter of time. At his current speed, crossing such a distance would take less than half a day. Time passed swiftly. In just about 2 hours, the distant horizon began to change. A vast, boundless domain slowly revealed itself before his eyes. Spiritual energy surged like an endless ocean. Ancient auras permeated the heavens. Even space itself seemed heavier, as if weighed down by countless years of history and power. Xiao finally stepped into the Dan God Great Domain. The moment he entered, he did not pause, not even for a single breath. Instead, his figure shot forward once again like a streak of black lightning tearing across the sky. His direction was clear, the core of the Dan God clan, the inner domain, and this time, he made no attempt to conceal himself. His aura spread freely unrestrained, like a blazing sun rising across the domain. He wanted them to know. He had arrived, and soon, the entire Dan God clan would feel his presence. After entering, he did not slow down. Instead, he continued straight toward the core, the inner domain of the Dan God clan. The Dan God Great Domain was divided into 2 parts. The outer domain, where countless ordinary descendants lived. The inner domain, where those with over 5% bloodline concentration resided. Though rare, their numbers still reached into the billions. After about 10 minutes of flight, Xiao crossed into the inner domain. He did not use spatial teleportation. Instead, he deliberately flew at high speed across the sky. This immediately attracted the attention of many experts. Most of them were Supreme Realm experts. As for Earth Supreme, Xiao only sensed one. Xiao blatant advance was intentional. He wanted to draw attention, so that the strong of the Dan God clan would report his arrival to their higher-ups. Seeing the purple-robed man, Xiao appeared somewhat surprised. He truly had not expected that the person who had helped him before would actually be the clan leader of the Dan Godi clan. Continuing from before, Xiao floated in mid-air. In front of him was a boundless ocean, while behind him stretched a vast and endless land. Standing at such a position, Xiao calmly waited for the reaction of the higher-ups of the Dan God clan. Suddenly, from the land behind him, countless sounds of air being torn apart rang out. All of those who arrived were experts from the outer clans of the Dan God clan. Most of them were at the three heavenly states, but there were also dozens of Supreme Realm experts. Who is this person? How dare he barge into our Dan God clan's territory so arrogantly? Is he provoking our clan? Wait, he doesn't seem to have any ill intent, does he? He hasn't directly crossed the Dan God Sea. According to our clan's rules, outsiders are allowed to enter the outer domain, as long as they do not cross the Dan God Sea. As Xiao quietly floated before the Dan God Sea, the experts of the Dan God clan continued their discussions. After about 10 minutes, a powerful aura suddenly roared out from the inner domain. What appeared was an old man holding a black staff. His strength had reached the peak Earth Supreme level. It's Elder Dan Kyong. As soon as the old man appeared, cries of shock erupted around the Dan God Sea. Almost no one had expected that it would be Elder Dan Kyong personally coming to receive the intruder. A few breaths later, Elder Dan Kyong crossed a distance of millions of miles and arrived in front of Xiao. "I am Dan Kyong," he said. "On behalf of the Dan God clan, I welcome the Lord of the Dochi World Flame Emperor Xiao. Making you wait outside the Dan God Sea is truly our clan's negligence. You are a distinguished guest of our clan. Please follow me into the inner clan." Hearing Dan Kyong's words, Xiao smiled slightly. It had to be said a giant force like the Dan God clan was extremely well informed. He had only just arrived, yet they already knew his identity. At present, almost no one in the Great Thousand World knew that he was the Lord of the Dochi world. Not even the Dochi world itself. "Senior Dan Kyong is too polite," Xiao replied. "I came without prior notice. That is truly presumptuous of me." "Follow me," Dan Kyong said. "The clan leader wishes to see you." Then he took the lead and flew toward the horizon. In the next dozens of breaths, Xiao followed Dan Kyong across nearly 10 million miles of the Dan God Sea. Only when a vast and boundless continent appeared before them did Dan Kyong's voice sound again. "We've arrived." As they advanced deeper, Xiao noticed something. Every million miles forward, the density of spiritual energy doubled. After traveling over 10 million miles, the spiritual energy density had increased by over 1,000 times compared to the outside world. Finally, they arrived at a mountain range covered in high-grade medicinal herbs. On a certain peak, a figure was quietly waiting. It was a middle-aged man. When Xiao saw him clearly, his heart shook violently, because he was the very person who had once helped him in the Dan spirit domain together with the old farmer, and had defeated a heavenly emperor from outside the domain. "Dan Yu, this is our clan leader," Dan Kyong said, as he brought Xiao over. The two slowly descended from mid-air and landed on the mountain peak where Dan Yu stood. "Ha ha, what kind of expression is that? Don't recognize me anymore?" Dan Yu laughed loudly as he looked at Xiao. Xiao came back to his senses and cupped his fists. Junior Xiao greets clan leader Dan. "No need to be so polite." Dan Yu waved his hand and continued. "Let's talk about something else first. Tell me about the ancient god clans, the true beings standing at the very top of the Great Thousand Worlds pyramid, on par with the myriad spirit god clan." Dan Yu's gaze narrowed slightly as he looked at Xiao, his expression carrying a hint of curiosity mixed with something deeper. "What happened after your encounter with the Mohe god clan?" he asked slowly, his tone calm yet probing. "You didn't take action, did you?" The words seemed casual, but beneath them lay a sharp edge. For a brief moment, the surrounding spiritual energy grew subtly tense. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's eyes flickered. A faint, almost imperceptible sharpness passed through his gaze, like a blade unsheathed for only an instant before being hidden again. Dan Yu's question had clearly struck a place he did not expect. Memories surfaced, fleeting but heavy. The pressure of the Mohe god clan, the vast, suffocating presence of an ancient god clan, the feeling of standing at the edge of a storm he could not yet confront. He did not wish to revisit that moment. Yet after a short silence, Xiao still answered. Number. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried a weight that lingered in the air. Dan Yu studied him for a moment, then asked again. Then in the future, do you want revenge? This time Xiao did not hesitate. Yes. The answer came instantly. Simple, direct, resolute. There was no fluctuation in his tone, only certainty. Dan Yu's brows lifted slightly, a trace of interest appearing in his eyes. To be honest, he said, letting out a faint chuckle, I've never been fond of the ancient god clans. They stand too high and look down on everything beneath them. He paused, then leaned forward just a little. Since you want revenge, if one day you truly possess enough strength, will you go and take it? The wind atop the mountain seemed to still. All eyes seen and unseen were fixed on Xiao. For a moment he did not answer. Then, Number. He shook his head. The response was neither hesitant nor conflicted. It was calm. Too calm. Dan Yu's expression finally changed. A hint of surprise flashed across his face. This answer was not what he expected. Oh, Dan Yu narrowed his eyes slightly. For the sake of the great thousand world. Or are you worried that dragging the Mohe god clan into conflict will bring disaster upon the Do Chi world? He paused, then added with a faint smile. Or are you simply too soft-hearted? The questions came one after another, each sharper than the last. Yet Xiao merely smiled. A quiet, composed smile. He did not answer, because none of those reasons were his truth. What lay within him was something far more complex. Not hesitation, not fear, and certainly not mercy. It was a path he had already chosen, long before this moment. Seeing his silence, Dan Yu did not press further. Instead, he looked at Xiao for a long moment, as if trying to see through him. Then suddenly he laughed. All right, it seems you already have your own answer, and it's not something that can be shaken by a few words. His tone carried a trace of approval now. I won't ask any more. He waved his hand, lightly shifting the topic with ease. Let's return to why you came here. His eyes flickered with interest again. The 10,000 pill spirit jade that old farmer gave you. Where is it? Xiao blinked slightly, then raised his hand. 10,000 pill spirit jade. As his palm turned, a soft white glow gathered, and a jade slip quietly appeared. It hovered above his hand, emitting a faint ancient aura. Even the surrounding spiritual energy seemed to respond to its presence. Xiao flipped his palm. A white jade slip appeared. He handed it to Dan Yu. This was given to me by old farmer. It seems he intends to give you a push. You should cherish this favor well, because in every 10,000 pill gathering, there are only 40 10,000 pill spirit jades. 20 are controlled by the ancient 10,000 herb plains, and the rest are distributed by our Dan God clan. Only the most outstanding newcomers of the great thousand world are qualified to obtain one. You can be considered one of them. Dan Yu took the jade slip and said, For the next half year, you will have two privileges. First, you may mobilize most of the Dan God clan's resources. Second, you may gain early access to certain information. But while possessing these privileges, you must obey one rule. You must not cause any harm to the Dan God clan. Otherwise, your qualification to participate in the 10,000 pill gathering will be revoked. What do you plan to do? After hearing this, Xiao already knew what he needed to prepare. First, I need access to all information regarding the million medicinal ingredient records. Hearing this, Dan Yu was slightly stunned. Then flipping his hand, a grey jade slip appeared. He handed it to Xiao with a smile. You really are a clever newcomer. Xiao accepted it and smiled. The so-called million medicinal ingredient records was compiled by the Dan God clan in ancient times. After spending thousands of years traveling across the great thousand world, it recorded over 4 million types of medicinal ingredients used in alchemy. However, it only documented their unique properties without detailed refining methods. Hence it was named the Million Medicinal Ingredient Records. Although it was not the clan's supreme treasure, its status within the clan was still extremely high. Second, I need a special lower plane space. Xiao stated his second request.